Interest. I watch that a bit. I've seen it a few times. I like the show. How did you first get into acting? What first interested you about it?
I grew up in a little farm town in Iowa, and in those days, one of the after-school activities was speech and debate. There was a big tradition of that in the rural Midwest. I started doing monologues. You go to contests, county and district and state contests to do, dramatic monologues or comic monologues or extemporaneous speaking, that kind of thing. So I got into it that way. I suppose it was, I wasn't a strong player of sports, so this was a thing that I could do. And then there was drama club, of course. And I always liked that, and when it came time for me to go to college, I was the first of my family to go to college, and no one had any preconceived notion about what a young man ought to study. So when I said I wanted to be a theater major, nobody batted an eyelash.
Okay.
Off I went.
And so you had, I guess you moved to New York, and you had kind of a journey where you actually kind of gave up acting. Can you go into that a little bit?
Yeah, well, I graduated from college in Iowa, and then I moved straight to New York, which probably wasn't the best idea, because I had no idea how to begin, or who to see, or where the auditions were held, or anything like that, and it was all I could do to, it sort of knocked the wind out of me. This was in the mid-'70s. It was a tougher town then.
Yeah.
And so I just sort of let go of my dream, and I worked a variety of retail jobs, and eventually I became a magazine illustrator, and that's what I did for many years.
Did you go into teaching?
No, did I go to teaching?
Yeah, I thought I read maybe you tried teaching.
Yeah, I did a little bit. When I left New York in the 80s and moved south, I taught drawing at Flagler College in St. Augustine, and then later I taught a term of Acting 101 at Jacksonville University.
How good an actor you got to be a teacher?
Well, I don't know that you have to be a good actor. I think you need to be organized, and you have to be able to articulate the problems and solutions of the craft. And you don't. It's not one of those deals where you have to be great at it in order to teach it.
Okay.
But I think you have to have a sensibility about it.
How great did it feel to come back, and what got you back into it?
Well, due to a romantic entanglement, I found myself high and dry in North Florida, and my bridges were kind of burnt as an illustrator. So I thought, well, if I have to start over, I might as well do what I please. So I took a lot of odd jobs, and I did community theater or university theater or whatever I could find in those days, and got better at it. And eventually I started doing plays in equity theaters around the Southeast. I reached a point where I thought, well, I've done about all I can do here. I either need to go back to New York or I need to go to a conservatory program, grad school. And I ended up doing that. I went to the Alabama Shakespeare Festival, where I took a master's at a fairly advanced age for an actor, and that's where I met Carrie Preston, who I'm now married to. And when I graduated, I followed her here to New York.
Okay. So tell me, person of interest, explain how the machine works. I get a little confused when I watch it.
Well, the machine, the machine is just what we call it, for lack of a better word. It's a huge, complex computer system. It is made up of acres and acres of sophisticated servers. It's like what the NSA doesn't want us to think they have. It's a massive thing that can tap into, the traffic of emails and cameras and cell phones and all of that. And because that's more data, metadata, or whatever they want to call it, on the show, the makers of the machine have given it to the government.
Okay.
But they have kept a little back door in it. So every so often they get, in order to remain invisible and for the government not to know that they have this, they need a microscopic bit of data, and that is a Social Security number. So that's what they get. Every so often they get a Social Security number from the machine, and they know that the machine is telling them that the person that owns that Social Security number is about to be involved in a violent crime, and we don't know whether it's a perpetrator or the victim.
Okay. How feasible is this idea in real life?
It's really feasible.
Okay.
It appears that the PRISM system that you've been reading about in the paper is a version of what we have on the show. It may not be quite as far-reaching or omnipotent as the machine on the show, but it's all the same principle. And it's the only reason they're not doing exactly what we do on the show, and of course we have no guarantee that they're not. This business about the fine line between domestic and foreign surveillance, but whatever they have is capable of doing anything they want it to do.
Have you heard from any of these people? Real spies and real NSA people, and talk?
No.
Okay.
I wonder if some of them used to watch the show before it became common knowledge that NSA had PRISM. I wonder if they used to watch it and go, geez, I wonder where they got that idea from. It's awfully close to that thing I work on every day.
Okay. when a writer comes up with this idea for the show, because I think about this, I watch Breaking Bad and all these shows that have this long story arc. Do they know when they come in how they're going to end the series, or does that just kind of evolve? Do you know, especially your show?
I think generally they don't know. I mean, I used to be on Lost,
right?
And I know that the creators of Lost had not an ending in mind, but they had a closing image. But it made sense that they would, because it was a reverse or mirror of the opening image of the series. So that's kind of easy,
right.
And not too, what's the word I want to use? Not too prescient or whatever. But I think generally they have maybe a rough outline of how the thing spins out into time and space. But I think it becomes a big challenge in the later writing when you know a series is coming to a close.
Right.
Then they have to get down to the particulars, because the devil's in the details as ever.
What was it like to because you were on one of those last episodes of the X-Files where the show kind of had gone past its limit. I thought, what was it like to be on that, in those death throes?
Well, it felt to me, I mean, my wife and I were, rabid fans of that show, and I was so pleased to at least sneak in under the gun before it was all over. But it did feel like a show in decline, sort of. And I'm not sure, I don't know, I haven't gone back and watched that whole series over again, but I'm not sure they needed that last season.
Right.
But I'm glad that I was able to participate.
So now your character has kind of a little disabled. He fakes a limp, right? He has a limp. Does that because I watch House too, and I wonder, does that kind of hurt you? Does that screw up your legs at all, or?
No, but you're right to ask the question about it, because when you know you're playing a character with a disability, you have to be careful how you plan it out, how much you're going to do or how little, how much is useful for character, but not too much so that it doesn't give you real physical problems.
Okay.
So the thing I do is actually fairly easy, as long as I always remember to do it.
Okay. Now again, you had Lost. How does Hollywood keep a secret? You have all these shows that everybody wants to know. Do they have goons running around in case you divulge a script? It's never happened that I know of.
Well, I mean, stuff has gotten out.
Yeah.
That's why they're as paranoid and as security conscious as they are. The scripts on Person of Interest, they all have a watermark on them with your name on it. And so if the script gets out, if it's in someone's hands and is recoverable, they'll know the source. Yeah.
You'll be a person of interest.
Yeah, and those policies are based on, they're the solution be more liberal about, oh, here's a copy for your agent, and here's a copy for your manager, and here's a copy for your publicist, and some of those people, pass it around the office or whatever, and next thing you know, it's online.